Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in Genesis chapter 8, and we're going to talk about Noah's year of hell, or patience, whichever one, or both, where he is in a boat. And this is not a cruise ship, so it wasn't designed to be a cruise kind of ship. When you think about all of the amenities on a cruise ship. Now, I've never been on a cruise, but when you think about all of the amenities, Noah didn't have. So what we're not talked about, of course, is let's say even bathroom amenities, right? But I would say that it would probably be pretty much what the bathroom arrangements were at the time. And as I said, this wasn't something that was torturous for Noah. To me, God would have already looked ahead, and he would have provided for that during the time. His grace would have been upon Noah and his family to endure, as well as the animals. They were in the ark for over a year, right? And so God looked out for them in terms of keeping them. And as I said in the last study, that no carnivorous animal like lions and bears and attack the donkeys and whatever. They were all under God's command. All right, so Genesis chapter 8, verse 1 says, "And God remembered Noah." Now, when you see this term, because we're going to see it throughout the Bible, when God remembered it, of course, but so when we see things like this, one, we're talking about how man is writing. In other words, God used, in a sense, man used writing, things like that, to try to convey. Now, there was no way man, especially in his sinful state, could convey accurately the invisible creator of the universe. But when he says that, so, you use certain statements, you use certain phrases to try to convey, God. Right? So when it says God remembered Noah, it doesn't mean he forgot. And the idea here doesn't even mean or suggest that God was capable of forgetting. I forget now. Okay, in my age, I forget. Sometimes even as you see me speak, I'm thinking, wait a minute, what, the word I want to convey. And sometimes you'll see me stumbling, like, okay, what is that word here? And it's the simplest of words, and yet it escapes my mind. Okay, well, that is not with God. And sometimes I remember, right? Sometimes I remember, go, oh, there it is. Sometimes I won't remember till after I finish, like, oh, man, that wasn't great. But when it talks about he remembered Noah, and again, the idea wasn't that he forgot, but that this was the covenant. This was really on the foremost on his mind. All right. So it says, and God remembered Noah as well as all of the wildlife and all of the livestock that were with him in the ark. God caused the wind to pass over the earth, and the water began to subside. The sources of the watery depths and the floodgates of the sky were closed, and the rain from the sky stopped. Now, again, keep this in mind, and I have to kind of indulge myself here, because this is one of my trades, right? This is one of my professions. I'm a water plant operator, but I do digress. I won't. I can remember as a young boy vividly being only told that it just rained, on the earth for 40 days. Well, He did a whole lot more than that, right? You see that God opened the floodgates, the underground waters, as well as, you still had, remember, you still had the oceans. And of course, then it just rained. God just kind of like, took the evaporation claw out and just let it just rain, If a meteorologist was to say, well, probably in fact, a meteorologist probably could do a very good a good job of kind of describing kind of how God used the hydrological cycle to submerge the earth into water. Okay? But now he's stopping all of that and he's restoring everything. It's going back. And if you remember, it's kind of interesting that in Genesis 1, this is how we come upon the earth. That the earth was submerged in water, minus a boat floating, right? All right. Verse 2 again, the sources of the watery depths and the floodgates of the skies were closed, and the rain from the skies stopped. The water steadily receded from the earth, and by the end of 150 days, the waters had decreased significantly. The ark came to rest in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, on the mounts of Ararat. Now, forever people have been searching for the ark on the Mount of Ararat. What is interesting here is that obviously there have been some climate changes, because when Noah gets out the boat on the top of Mount Ararat, he's not freezing to death. Whereas now, when people go to the top of Mount Ararat, I think one of the things that stopped people from really discovering if there's really the ark up there is it's extremely cold at the weather. It doesn't permit you to approach. Now, another thing is that you just probably just, from the wood and all that, there's no boat to be seen up there. But, you could say, blessed to the man who finds an actual ark. There are people that have said and claimed that they have found an ark, but no proof yet, concrete proof. All right. And again, I'm not for sure you can even get to the place where it says there. What this points out is there's certainly some things that have changed since this moment. All right. Verse 5, the waters continued to recede until the 10th month. And in the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were visible. After 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark he had made, and he sent out a raven and went back and forth until the waters had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove. Then he sent out a dove to see whether the waters of the earth's surface had gone down, but the dove found no resting place for her foot. She returned to him in the ark because the waters covered the surface of the whole earth. He reached out and brought her into the ark to himself. So Noah waited 7 more days and sent out the dove from the ark again. And when the dove came to him at evening, there was a plucked olive leaf in her beak. So Noah knew that the waters of the earth's surface had gone down. Then verse 12, and after he had waited another 7 days, he sent out the dove, but she did not return to him again. So that in the 601st year, in the 1st month, on the first day of the month, the waters, the water that had covered the earth was dried up. Then Noah removed the ark's cover and saw that the surface, move this up here, that the surface, then he saw, oh, come on. All right, guys. There we go. So it says, then Noah removed the ark's covers. I'm keep missing here. Messing up here. Let's see. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. Then he says, uh, verse 13 again. It says, and in the 600th year of the first year, in the first month, on the first day of the month, the waters that had covered the earth was dried up. Then Noah removed the ark's cover and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. And by the 27th day of the second month, the earth was dry. Now, what's kind of interesting about this process here, of course, probably was more grueling than we're reading it. He had to wait, but it showed that again all of the water was gone. Of course, the land was empty, except for the life that was in the ark. He opens the door. He sees that everything is dry. Which is that kind of interesting. You see how God works. That God did not send them out in a mud, right? But he sends, he prepares the earth again. The land, everything is dry. What's also interesting, that at some point you're going to begin to see plant life and tree life and stuff. Now, the dove had already saw some of that. That kind of was interesting. What some of the trees and stuff was submerged underwater. Anyway, verse 15. Then God spoke to Noah, and it says, "Come out of the ark, you, your wife, your sons, and your son's wife with you. Bring all of the living creatures that are with you, birds, livestock, those that crawl on the ground, and they will spread over the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So again, we see this command from God. You can almost see the kind of a second creation day, right? Except not as it was in the Genesis chapter 1. Man was already here and already created. Verse 18. So Noah, along with his sons, his wife, and his son's wife came out. All wildlife, all livestock, every bird, every creature that crawls on the earth came out of the ark by their groups. Let's see here. I'm kind of wondering what kind of earth it was. We will see from this point, again, sin corrupting not only man, but the earth, animals, things like that. You think about animals today, how they do attack man. For the most part, they don't. And remember, that was installed by God in creation. But you do see where there were some animals that would attack man, like a bear. You don't want to get close to a bear. Some of y'all are kind of stupid when you want to get so close to take a picture. You're dumb. Stay away from wild animals, as they say. But this is kind of a new, again, man is stepping out. He is stepping out. Now we're going to see more of this. Let's look at the verse 20 says, "Then Noah built an altar to the Lord. He took some of every kind of clean animals and every kind of clean birds and offered burnt offering to the altar." And when I want to come back to this. One of the things that is kind of always curious to me, I haven't seen where Scripture has ever said why. And let me stop jumping here. Understand the fact that he's offering burnt offerings here, right? The fact that he's offering burnt offerings. Where did that come from? In other words, did God? Because I haven't seen in the Scripture. I haven't seen in Scripture where God, before the law of Moses, right? So during this period of time, from Adam to Moses, there was no law. That's important to understand. There's no law. Where did man get the knowledge, or was it even a command that God even accepted burnt offerings, animal sacrifice? I just don't know where this come from at. But we see that God accepts it. Now, going back to Cain and Abel, remember there was an offering. Abel offered animal sacrifices. Cain offered his fruit, and God said, "I want your fruit," right? So the idea of sacrifice, and what I'm saying is I just don't have the answer to that. But even in the book of Revelations now, keep this in mind, that there's an altars and there's an idea of offerings to God. And you can say God's into offerings and receiving offerings. Just don't know. I don't have an answer to that. So verse 21, when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, he said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of man, even though man's inclination is evil from his youth. I will never again strike down every living thing as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will not cease. Now that's a promise right there, by the way, guys. Look at that. There's a couple of things that's very important with this statement here. Well, three things. One, notice what he said. He said, one, I will not, curse the ground, or what the promise is that there's not going to be a worldwide flood again. Obviously, there's flood. We just seen them in the news, right? New York, from New York down to New Orleans, well, there's a flood. It's just a worldwide flood. That's the promise. And then he says, as long as the earth endures, there's always going to be this. So in other words, there's never going to be a destruction of the earth. And I see that as a greater promise. So I'm not really worried about asteroids destroying the earth. I'm not even really worried about nuclear bombs destroying, notice this, the earth. That's not to say that we won't have atrocities happen, right? So in other words, hurricanes do a lot of damage. Tornadoes do a lot of damage. So we're not saying that doesn't happen. It does. It just means God is not doing it. And there's not going to be anything that's on a kind of a earth-wide destruction level. And notice this statement here, that this is very important in verse number 21, when he says, I will never again curse the ground because of man, even though man's inclination is evil from his youth. That's an important thing right there, that man's inclination is evil from his youth. Man is sinful. All man is sinful. This is why the most important need for man is not reformation, but redemption that comes through Jesus. But right here, notice man's inclination. Now notice this, from his youth. So we will always default to our sinful nature. What changes is things like law that God brought in. We're going to see this later on, that God brings in the law, that sometimes God intervenes. But man is sinful. And until the redemption of Jesus Christ, this is how we always are. We're sinful. Man is sinful. So God makes the promise. He will never again destroy the earth with a flood or any kind of destruction of the earth. Because why? Man is sinful. Okay? He's never going to do that. But I think the reality we should note is that man is sinful. Okay. All right, guys. We're picking up in chapter 9 when he makes the covenant with Noah as they begin to populate the earth. All right, guys. I'll see you in the next study. All right.